You can find a group on Facebook for just about anything you want to be a part of. But that's not the only option you have to build an online community. Yes, there are more options available. And this is good to know because I know Facebook may not be your jam, and that is absolutely all right. Now, at the time that this episode airs, the world is starting to open back up, but most networking events are still going to be online. And I'm okay with that because I've got a tight schedule and limited access to a vehicle, so that works better for me anyway. But for some of you, you may have to continue to step out of your comfort zone to build an online community. But it's so worth it. So exactly how can you do it and where can you start so that you can find your people online? Well, that's what my chat with Emily Aborn is all about. Emily is a marketing professional and the owner of She Built This. She lives in Temple, New Hampshire with her husband Jason and their dog Clyde. Now, Emily has owned her own business since 2014, and she loves helping others discover how to share their stories through compelling content, creative social media, and copy throughout their branding. So now that you know a little bit about Emily, let's dive into episode number 64 so you can see how you can start building your own online community. Welcome back to the More Than Capable Mompreneur podcast. I'm Shannon Baker, a coffee-loving mompreneur that started as a virtual assistant and turned into a total systems geek. And I want to help you shift your mindset and embrace your worthiness while creating systems in your business so you can be more productive and build success on your own terms without the mom guilt. Are you loving that? Well, I hope you're ready for real conversations that will help you beat the perfectionist inside, rediscover your strengths, and up-level your self-love in the mom cracks of time so you can stop letting fear hold you back because you are enough and you do enough. We are more than capable mompreneurs. So grab your cup of coffee, some sparkling water, or pour a glass of your favorite wine and let's dive in. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. I am excited to be talking with Emily Aborn. I'm part of her Facebook community online, which is called She Built This. And I must say I love it because Emily really fosters the sense of community online in her group, which is, we're going to dive a little bit more into that once we, start our chat together. But I'm going to let Emily tell us a little bit about herself before we dive into the good stuff.
Thank you for saying those things. So as you heard, my name is Emily Aborn, and I'm the owner of She Built This, which is a women's entrepreneurship organization. And I also I have two businesses. So my second business is content writing for like small to medium-sized marketing companies and small and solopreneurs.
Oh, great. Nice and quick, which is really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, I can go deeper, but we'll leave it.
That's okay. So I'm looking forward to this conversation, especially because the way we have to build communities and network and everything, as we all know, has had to change, and everything has had to convert to being online. And one thing that many people may struggle with is actually making connections because they were used to doing things in real life. So, how would you define a community nowadays based on, I guess, the scene of the world that we live in?
That's a great question. I think that a community, and I'll be anxious to hear what your thoughts are too, but I think a community is really like a group of like-minded individuals that are working towards some sort of common goal. So it doesn't all have to be that they have the exact same goal, but the overall goal is in alignment with each other. So for example, in the She Built This group, it's women entrepreneurs and professionals who are all believing the fact that they can live their very best life and that is possible. And so we're doing that through running our own businesses and being our best professional selves. So that's kind of like the overarching goal, which is what I think fosters that sense of community.
Absolutely, and I agree. Because if I look at the diversity in my community, it's generally women. They're not all moms, but all of us have built our businesses to allow that true lifestyle freedom. It's aligned with our vision, our goals. We put family first, we know our values, we stick to those, and we have a specific skill set that we use in our businesses. And that, along with the love of coffee and wine, are, some of the dynamics that really draw us together as a very close knit community. So, now, how would you recommend we seek out a community that fits us?
Yeah, this is a good one. So there's so many things right now, and especially I think at the beginning of the pandemic, I felt like, oh my gosh, all of my groups have to go away. Like we would meet in person and have workshops, and I felt that real sense of loss that I think we all feel when those things are gone. But the more I got, I had to step out of my comfort zone because virtual is not my comfort zone. But I basically created the same group that we had that now meets virtually. And what it's allowed it to do is be open to people all over the world, really now. So that's the question, right? There's so many things at our fingertips right now. How do we decide? And I think it's all about, like, there are 50 million Facebook groups that we could be part of. There are organizations galore, speaking groups, moms groups. There's all this stuff we can be part of. But I think it's really important to look at, like, where you are in your life right now and where you want to go, because those are the people, we've all had friends in our lives that maybe they're not like fair weather friends, but they've been there for a reason, and they've been there for just a short period of time, and then we kind of move on from them. And I'm not saying that happens with communities, but communities are sort of the same way, where we're looking for something in a period in our life that aligns with our goals and our values. So that's my first suggestion. There are all kinds of options. There are Facebook groups. There are things like, virtual masterminds and accountability groups and peer groups and things like that. There are events that you can be a part of. And a lot of those events break out into something afterwards that become a group. But so there's all kinds of things depending on what your goals are. If you're a writer and your goal is to perfect or work on those skills and be with other writers, then you're going to want to seek out those groups. But there is a community for everyone. Facebook actually did this amazing ad, and I'm only using them as an example because it just shows the power of what we're all seeking. They did this amazing ad last year's Super Bowl that was all about Facebook groups. And just like, it almost moved me to tears, because it was just all of these people. There were Facebook groups for everybody. There were Facebook groups for like painters and carpenters and just people of all walks of life looking for all different things in their life. And so I think it really comes down to, like, not what void you're trying to fill, but what you're trying to achieve in finding that community.
Yeah, that is good to point out. And like you mentioned, what I really like is that it changes. So, I've seen that over time. There were groups that I may have joined, early a year ago or early in the year, that now, over the past 12 months, my life has changed, my business has changed, and the group may not necessarily fit me anymore because I'm in a different place.
Yeah.
And it also comes down to knowing what it is that you're looking for, and how, and then, putting in that research work to find it online. Because as you mentioned, you can find a group on Facebook for just about everything in the world.
You'll be so proud of me. I actually had somebody, I paid someone to go through all of my Facebook groups that I'm part of, and any Facebook groups that I run, and like leave groups that I don't want to be part of, and help kind of weed out the ones that I do. So it was really, it's taking that time to just like really evaluate and be intentional, because I think that when you do decide to become a part of a community, you should really immerse yourself in it and be a part of it. And if you're part of like 50 or 60 Facebook groups, you're not really going to be able to dive in on any one in particular, and like, I think when it comes to ones that you really want to invest your time in, it doesn't have to be a Facebook group, but anything. Like, I think 5 is pretty much the max for most people. The sign behind you says focus in on one task. And it's the same kind of concept, like you can go a mile wide and an inch deep in everything, or you can go a mile deep and an inch wide, because your focus is just that much tighter.
Yeah, and that makes sense, because I know one thing we're all guilty of doing is we become, really good online friends with someone who has a Facebook group, so they invite us into the group, but it's something that we absolutely have no interest in. So we accept the invitation. But really, that doesn't help the person build engagement in their group. It just builds up the member numbers, which does nothing. I'd rather have a Facebook group with 50 engaged people opposed to 500 people and no one ever engages with anything in the group. So like you mentioned, that's a mindset shift. And I've left some groups that belong to some friends of mine because it just wasn't something that I needed. And I felt bad being part of the group and never participating in anything. So don't feel bad. Let your friends know it doesn't fit you. It's nothing personal, but we need to spend our time where it's going to be beneficial, whether it's for personal reasons or for business reasons.
Yeah, and you're right, there is a little bit of that guilt factor, I think, that weighs on us in some of these group situations. And you can't let that be a factor, because you're right. At the end of the day, it's not doing you any favors, and it's also not doing them any favors if you're just sitting in there guilty, but crickets.
Exactly. And the thing with Facebook groups is you don't have to be in any of the groups every day,
Right.
but make sure you're at least checking in and commenting on something, even if you just touch it once a week or once every other week. It still shows that you're engaged, but we all understand we have a million and one things to do, and the list probably grows every day. But for them to at least see your name popping up, on a pretty consistent or regular basis lets them know, okay, well, Emily's busy, but it was good to see her active in the group today.
Mhm.
So we can keep that in mind too, because we only have 24 hours in a day. So if you're like me, I spend as little time as I can on Facebook. So I don't have time to be in all the groups that I'm in sometimes. So I regularly go through, probably I would say at least twice a year, and do some cleanup like you just did, because I have to come to the realization that I just can't be everywhere.
Yeah. And to that, I mean, I'm sure you recommend these kind of techniques too. Kind of to the time blocking that we talked about on my podcast, I time block for social media. So I will set aside my morning time when I'm taking care of, that's like my business time. And I count social media as part of that plan. So I will set aside the morning to check my email and check social media, and then I don't check it again until the end of my day. Because otherwise those, that little bell, it is literally designed to keep you addicted to that app and like checking to see what is on the other side of those notifications. And so we can get really sucked into that, and then before you know it, your entire day has been, engaging on Facebook groups. And while that may be great for, certain things and certain times in your business, it's not practical if you're trying to live a more productive life. So I really encourage people, and I encourage people to do it with like their networking engagements too. I have one day per week where I do all of my calls and all of my networking. I'm the kind of person that it takes a lot out of me to do those things. And so I find that if I can put it all into one day, then I'm not breaking up that energy throughout the week. I'm just like focusing it in on one day. And that might look different for everybody. I know for a lot of mompreneurs, that's not practical. They can't take a whole day where they're doing their calls and things. But for me, that's really been like the key to being successful and still staying active and present, and how I can also make better choices about the groups I'm part of. I'm like, well, that isn't on that day, so it's not going to work for me.
Those are very good tips, because that helps us to be intentional with our time. Because, like we talk about, when I was on your podcast, with time blocking, like I specify in my daily tasks, or my time block has a space for professional development or business tasks, whatever the case may be. And that's how I limit the amount of time that I spend on social media. I do the same thing. So when I hop on, whether it's Instagram or Facebook for 10 minutes, I'm in there with intent. I know exactly, if it's 10 minutes where I'm responding to comments on my posts, then 10 minutes another time in the day where I'm responding to comments I got from stories. Then it's another 10 minutes where I'm engaging and leaving meaningful comments
Yes, yes.
on other Instagram posts, not just hitting the like button or, double tapping and moving on, but I'm really engaging or participating in the conversation. Now, I must admit, I have to get better in doing it with Facebook, but I know I get more back and forth conversation on Instagram, which is why I spend most of my time there. and not as much on Facebook probably as I should be. So I do need to make that adjustment. But that's neither here nor there. But time block and be intentional because it definitely makes a difference.
Yeah.
So now, what would you say are the perks of being part of a community or building a community?
Well, I'll tell you my answer in a quick story.
Okay.
Um, so in my first business, I owned a retail store, and it wasn't a very exciting store. We sold mattresses, and they were like, yeah, yeah. Everyone laughs at me, and they did then too. So they were kind of like high end luxury mattresses, and the foot traffic in the store, it was like few and far between during the weekdays. So I was pretty bored and lonely, like all the time by myself, except for the weekends when people would go mattress shopping.
Mhm.
And that was like that was to be expected in the industry, and the store was successful, and from everybody else's perspective it was doing great, and I was just absolutely miserable. And like I had no one I really could talk to about being an entrepreneur or being in business. It just, and everybody was always looking at me like I had five heads, except my husband and I were the only people that would talk about our business together.
Okay.
And that gets old. Every single night at dinner you're like talking about the same thing. So um I started to work with a mentor from the SBDC, which is like our local, it was just like free business advising. And I had never had a coach or anything like that. So I worked with her, and she sat me down and she was like, you need to treat yourself like a baby brand new business and get out there and go meet people. And at the time I only had Mondays and Tuesdays off. And so that felt like, when am I going to do that? So I would take every Monday and Tuesday like it was my job, and I would book like coffee chats and networking things. And I joined the chamber. And two of those coffee chats are still to this day like my business best friends.
Cool.
They're, yeah, yeah. So we got really, really close, but that opened me up to meeting all kinds of people. And through that experience, I realized, oh my gosh, like this is what I've been missing the entire time, is people that are doing what I'm doing. And when I opened my eyes up to that, like New Hampshire, especially, I was like, oh my gosh, there are so many women entrepreneurs. And I had no idea. Here I am thinking I'm like on this little island,
A one-man island.
Yeah. So that's actually really how She Built This got started, is I just saw that need for us to join together, and like all, we're all doing the same thing. So why aren't we doing it together? So I think that answers your question. For me, it was really a matter of like, I needed, like, working for yourself all day, every day is hard. It's a roller coaster ride. You go through really intense stuff sometimes where you want to give up and throw in the towel, even on your best of days. Sometimes you don't even know why. You're like, I don't know why. I just don't like any of this. And so I think having those people in your life that are going through what you're going through and struggling with the same things you are, but also are there to like pick you up, dust you off, kind of like, slap your cheeks and say like, let's keep going. So that's really what I think the power of community is.
Yes. And I mean, actually, it goes to how we met. So both of us are connected to Stacy,
Yeah.
but I met Stacy through a local connection, Monica, who I've never met in person, and she lives in Virginia. I live in Maryland. We've set dates, but we've only been able to talk online. Something has always come up, but we are like online coffee buddies. We've
Yep.
been connected for years. That's how I connected with Stacy years ago. And then through Stacy, Emily and I connected together. And all of us do different things, but we have the same type of mindset, mentality, and approach to one, building connections and not necessarily networking, but just building relationships with other women online. And you're right, we cheer each other on, which is great. And it's not always about business, which is what makes it fun.
Agreed.
But it's good to have that group of women online that you can connect with, because then we can bounce ideas off of each other, because all of us don't have someone in our home that has the entrepreneurial mindset. I know I don't. Like, I talk business to my husband and he tells me, I've been in business for almost 9 years, and he looks at me and he says, I still can't explain to people what you do. I don't know. I know it's a bunch of stuff online and it's got something to do with technology and systems, but I can't explain what that is. So when I talk business to him, he's like a deer in headlights. So I can't use him as a sounding board. That's where my community comes in. I, text a couple of people or start a conversation in a group. It's like, I'm thinking about this. What do you guys think? What about this or that? That's where your community comes in. And then when good things happen, they cheer you on. Or when you're low, you're feeling like, I'm ready to give up because this isn't working. Then they give you the feedback. Well, try this or try that. Have you thought about this? Or maybe it's not the right time. So that's like the cheerleading squad that we all need, because this journey is hard.
And you know what? You made me think of another thing too when you said that about asking your husband. These groups are such great places to get resources. So like I went into my group the other day and I was like, I had somebody who was going to be helping me as a virtual assistant. She kind of like, she ghosted me basically. And so I said, I need help finding a person. And somebody like raised their hand right away and said, I can help you. And I have this many hours. Like her business is a little bit slow right now. And so she's looking for extra tasks to take on. And it was just perfect. And it happened in 5 seconds, whereas I'm sitting there like, should I go to Fiverr? Should I like type it into Google? What do I do? And it was like all of 5 seconds and I had the resource that I needed.
And that is wonderful, because that kind of eliminates the trial and error portion of when you're looking for someone to do a task. It's much quicker when it's a referral process, opposed to you just starting out fresh and you're just hoping for the best. I found that as well.
Absolutely.
So this is great. These have been great tips and reasons why we really need to focus some time and attention on building an online community. But now, what if the listeners or someone may say, well, I don't like social media. What else can they do?
Yeah, so I think that's really valid. And a lot of people don't like social media. So that's okay. I think that the other ways to get involved are really like some of these events that I was talking about at the beginning. And also just having Zoom calls with people, picking up the phone, sending, a lot of my friends, we just send text messages. That is networking and building relationships right there. And I think that's something that we miss when we use the word networking. Is it's really not like, I'm not trying to sell you something. You're not trying to sell me something. We are building relationships and we're just like setting these foundations. And I would say probably 90% of the time, you're not selling to the person ever that you're talking to. You're selling to someone that they know or that they know, like it could be so far down the line, like the way that somehow you met Stacy introduced you to me, like that's like 6 degrees of separation. So it's not always about selling. And I think that's where, when we think of social media, I think that's instantly what we think of. So there is a term actually for this. Voxer is another good example. WhatsApp. It's called the dark social, and it's really more about like the one-to-one connections with people rather than like one-to-many connections. And another one, which is new, is Clubhouse. And you love Clubhouse. I know. I'm still like kind of on the fence about it. It's not that I don't want to love it. I just am like, I don't have time. But that's another, like, it's so powerful. Our voices are so, so powerful when we're connecting with other people. And so I think Clubhouse offers that like in a way that nothing else does, not even video really, because it's really hard to watch a video when you're doing something else, or like when your spouse is sitting there with you. So but Clubhouse is different. It's like just gives you that instant like connection or not with somebody, I guess. So that's another great way that is new to network.
Yeah, and I would say even if someone doesn't really like social media, it's all about using it strategically to make those connections. And to the point you made earlier, someone who I've known, she's been in business for, oh gosh, I know over 20 years and has been very successful. But she said growing a business isn't about who you know, but who knows you.
Yeah.
That's where your business is going to grow based on referrals. So we do need to shift from thinking, oh, well, I need to make a sales pitch to every person that I connect with. No, it's about building relationships. So when they're talking to someone else, and they say, oh, well, I'm looking for someone that knows marketing and knows how to build communities, they'll think of Emily. They'll say, I know just the person, and let me connect you with that person. So that's what we need to focus our time on. And you're right. I love Clubhouse, but I use it very strategically as well.
Yeah.
When I'm on Clubhouse, I look to see what topics are being discussed that day. And I only allow myself a certain amount of time to be on there because it can be another rabbit hole. So I'm not just, I know some people that consume it all day long. I don't understand how their brain can take it, but I'm either there to learn about the topic. One day a week, I go in and see who I know that's hosting the room. I want to support them because they're part of my online community. Or I'm looking for topics that I can take the stage and speak, not pitch, but share my expertise, which then pushes traffic to Instagram, where we can continue the conversation via coffee chat.
Yeah.
Since I've joined Clubhouse last month, I have a 9% increase in engagement that has gone to my Instagram page. And I have had 3 coffee chats, very good coffee chats with people that I connected to on Clubhouse.
Wow. Yeah, I think it was something you said something about social media not being a bad thing. And I think you're right. It's really all about our perspectives and like recognizing that these things are tools. They're like money, like money is not a bad thing innately. It's a tool, it's a resource. And so you can use it and in a good way. And then the other thing is, I think when we, like you said, in Clubhouse, you don't go to pitch, like it's really when you're approaching these things about how can I add value just as much as I'm looking for value. But I would actually say like you need to make what you're adding double what you're looking to get, like I think it's really just coming from a place of, Stacey Naheisky says, when you come from a place of service, you don't need to be nervous. And I love that line. But it's just true. It's just coming from a place of like, how can I give? How can I add value?
And really, that's what growing a business is all about, is always adding value in whatever way you can, giving, because let's say it's one thing we all know, if you give, just to give, it makes us happier. And when you give without looking for something in return, generally you get back way more than you expected.
Yeah.
So this has been great, Emily. Thank you for sharing these wonderful tips about the online community with us. Now, before you go, I have a question for you. So I know you have some routines and systems in place. So what would you say is one routine or system, pick which one, in your life or your business that you can't live without?
Every single morning, I make my bed very first thing, like before I even go pee. And I think that that is like one little thing that you can put off and put off and put off until later in the day. But it's like right when you get out of bed, you've already kind of done something. And it's a positive thing that makes you, every time you walk in your bedroom from that moment on, it's like set up and nice and ready for the night ahead. I'll give you one more that also sets me up for the day ahead. I always take time at the end of every day and I clean out my downloads folder and I write out my list for the next day. So I never like close down my computer without having that list ready to go for the next day, because I don't like to just come running to the gate in the morning like a hot mess. I like to know exactly what I have to do and what's going on and how I'm going to plan that out. So those I would say are my two, like check in the box night before and check in the box right away first thing in the morning.
And I love that. I am a huge fan of morning and nighttime routines to increase our productivity. So thank you for sharing those with us.
Yeah.
Now, where can everyone find you online?
So on Facebook and Instagram, She Built This is actually She Built This NH. And then you can also find it on shebuiltthis.org. And that's probably the easiest way. You can find everything from shebuiltthis.org. Yeah.
And don't worry if you all forgot this, because I'm going to drop the links to all of those places you can find Emily online in the show notes so you can connect with her. So thank you again for being with us today. I have enjoyed our chat with each other, and I know we'll keep chatting because we chat all the time anyway.
Thank you so much for having me, Shannon. This was really fun.
Well, thank you for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed my chat with Emily and are ready to start making some new connections online. If you want to test the waters, feel free to connect with me and the other busy women building their businesses in the online space inside of my Facebook group. I'm going to drop a link to that in the show notes. I would love to have you inside my community. Now, if you'd like to connect with Emily on Instagram to get more tips to help you make more connections or even to clarify your message online, the link to her Instagram profile is, as well as her Facebook group, is also going to be in the show notes. Now, if you enjoyed today's episode, please let me know. Take a screenshot, post it in Instagram stories, and tag me at _Shannon Baker. And remember, you are more than enough. So until next time, keep calm and streamline.